In this podcast, I speak with Robert Posey. Now, Robert and I have known each other for a couple of years. We connected via what you would say is a little bit of light public roasting, a little bit of verbal jousting, and we've become really good mates since. And on this podcast, we cover a whole bunch of different topics. But if we had to summarize it, the main areas would be insights into the journey of a successful entrepreneur and a successful salesperson, including the challenges and lessons you learn along the way. And some of them are legal lessons, some of them are not. But on the back of that, understanding the crucial role that mentors and the right kind of mentorship can play in personal and professional development. It is full of ideas for personal growth and self-reflection that can directly contribute to your success in sales, in entrepreneurship, or whatever it is you decide to apply yourself to. Enjoy. Start with some of the stories that you shared with
Are
me.
we in right now? Are we
We're
not?
in.
Are
We're
we not
in.
like?
Uh, I'm thinking of all of the stories that we shared, that you shared in particular, going up the volcano about Christmas and everything you've
With
experienced,
the
how you got to
fam?
where you are.
You talking
Sorry?
about Christmas with my family?
No, so remember the history of Christmas when we were descending, when we
Mm.
left Mike and Nick and Yup, everyone way behind us and just full steam ahead.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's interesting. There's like parallel lives that I've lived. Like I was living two different me's. There was like the kid who sought validation, whose teachers never thought he was enough. He was always distracted. He needs to test in other rooms, turned into a class clown. And then at some point, the class clown was like super focused on, well, I got to buy pot. There was that guy. Then there was the one who was 15 years old and started a pressure washing company,
mm,
made my first two sales and used all the money to buy pot, and ended up with no way to buy chemicals. So I could not then sell my next job because I
mm.
had no way to actually do the job. So that was my very first business. And then there's the kid who was raised in Christian schools and he was raised with religion and be a good boy. So there was that life being lived. Like I don't know, it was like torn between these two guys. Um, and at some point, I suspect smoking enough pot
Mm.
opened up some pathway to the universe that made me question everything. And we ended up, you and I, discussing Christmas. We were discussing the Amanita muscaria mushroom, this red and white mushroom that's used in I guess in the taiga forest in Russia, what would be known as Russia, just above Mongolia. And these shamans who wore red and white cloaks, and the best way to travel was by sleigh, and the only animal large enough to carry a sleigh through the snow was a reindeer. And yeah, it's an interesting story.
Mm.
Yeah.
That would
Okay.
take
So
up probably 3 hours on a podcast by itself because that was a long descent. That went for a while.
it was good though.
What you said? So you said you were a little bit of a rat bag in school, and that seems to be a theme amongst most of the people that I speak to. That it wasn't really for you, and it was about intent and application. That's pretty much across everyone. You have the intent of being successful, but you didn't necessarily have the application for the energy that you experience. And
Yeah.
some people play up when they're younger. Um, Others just kind of end up on weird paths until they figure it out.
Yeah.
What what did yours look like?
So let's see. I've always been an honest kid. Always. Even when I was doing, what did you call it? Rat bag? Your
Yeah,
words,
being a
not
rat bag.
mine.
Yeah.
Or even when I was doing rat bag things, I was still, if you caught me, I was honest. I
Mm,
might have been dishonest while I was doing the thing, which is it's a weird dynamic to have in your brain. But if anyone ever asked, I always told. And I went through, I remember first grade, as far as first grade, as far back as first grade, got in trouble. Third grade, trouble. Fifth grade, trouble. Not massive amounts of trouble. I've never served a long stint in prison, but I've done things that maybe could have ended me there. If it weren't for pivotal relationships, pivotal human beings, pivotal circumstances, experiences, moments. I guess I've that's kind of the general vibe. So I think through what the mainstream has referred to as ADD and ADHD, my brain has never worked the way I suspect it doesn't work the way that a lot of people's brains work. I
mm,
can't say most because the circles I travel in, the entrepreneurial circles, the sales professional circles, it seems like my brain works very similarly to lots and lots of these people. But for everyone outside of that box, I seem to be different. And I
mm,
guess we make up less than 10% of the population, uh, people with these brains. So when you think about being in school, it's only you and a couple other kids, and you're getting singled out.
mm,
It happens. And I ended up going to six different high schools. I was never expelled, but I was definitely asked, we'd prefer he didn't come back next year. You know, my parents had to go through that. And I suspect my parents did everything they knew how to do with the information they had. And I also suspect that because they did what they did, I developed maybe a chip on my shoulder. Maybe you might refer to that as experienced trauma in my life.
mm,
You know, there's varying degrees of trauma. My trauma was not the same as somebody who's, you know, sexually abused or something along those lines. But I had my own degree of trauma and things that made me feel feelings of inadequacy. You know, feelings of you're not enough. I still feel a lot of those things, but I've always had this weird. Maybe it's the ADD. Maybe it's the distraction to where stress doesn't stress me out. Like I can be stressed and I can get frustrated, but big things stress me for about a day. If I can make it to going to sleep the next day, it's nothing to be stressed about. Like it just literally didn't exist for me. So with that, I think I had very little care for how other people viewed my circumstance. Teachers, you know, teachers say you need to sit down, be quiet, stop talking in class. You're
mm,
disrupting everyone else. And it was like, yeah, okay, I'll tighten up today. I go to sleep, I wake back up. That stress is gone. It's not there anymore. So repeat the very next day. And I suppose I was probably pretty difficult to deal with. Um, so by the time you figure out people treat you differently, and I don't think it wasn't an awareness for me that I'm being treated differently. It was just a pressure, maybe there was
mm,
just something extra that I was dealing with consistently. And because it's not a positive pressure, it's more of a he's a frustrating kid, then you seek validation from your friends, or people you would consider to be your friends. I acted out, class clown, six different schools. Probably the reason I'm good at sales is because I had to learn how to make friends very, very quickly in new environments.
mm,
Everyone else is already partway through their year. I come in as the new kid.
mm.
Everybody's got their friend groups. Who am I going to partner with? Well, guess who laughs at the class clown? It's the 10%.
Yep.
So I naturally tended towards those other kids who would laugh at my jokes.
Mm.
Ended up with lots of kids who bought and sold drugs. Ended up with kids who committed like bigger crimes. Even got dragged along on one of those. I remember maybe I want to say I would have been in 11th grade, and these two kids asked me if I knew what it meant to hit a lick, and I didn't know what it meant to hit a lick. What it means, I can see your Australian side showing. What is this guy
Hit
talking about?
hit a lick.
Yeah, stealing, robbing. We were meant to go
Not
in.
where my mind went at all. Not even close.
So I guess to hit a lick is to go and steal something.
Mm.
So I had not, and it wasn't really explained to me beforehand. It was like, come on, we're gonna go do this. You can come with us. And it was like, righto, I'm getting in. So we ended up committing second degree burglary and grand larceny. Now, the wild part, like talk about pivotal moments, I dropped them off, stole my sister's car to go meet with them because I couldn't be bothered to drive my own car. I had one, but hers was quieter and I knew I could get out of the driveway. Drove, met up with them. We committed these crimes, and then I dropped them back off at their place and drove home. On my drive home, I passed out. I fell asleep. I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't drinking. It's called, I guess, adrenal fatigue, which when
Mm.
you're doing something that it elevates your adrenaline to a certain level, eventually your body can't sustain that anymore and you get really tired. So I got tired and I dozed off, turned the AC on, rolled the windows down, slapped my face, cranked the music up, dozed off, came back to. I made it to within about 2 miles of my house, dozed off again, and I woke up in the grass, came to, there's a tree in front of me, had no time to swerve, no time to push the brakes, nothing. And in fact, they tell me or told me at the time that push when I pushed the pedal, I missed the brake and hit the gas. So I actually accelerated into a tree. I think I was doing a little over 30 miles an hour when it happened. The speed limit in the area was 35. Um, but the steering wheel hit me in just the right spot
Mm.
to where it burst my spleen. There was nothing left of my spleen, and I almost bled to death internally. So called my mom. Mom, I fucked up. She's like, why aren't you in bed? And I'm like, I stole Sarah's car, my sister, which is funny because she's now a prosecutor for the same city where I went to jail. Um, but she was like, call an ambulance. I'll be there in a minute. She handled it like a pro. Like
Mm.
could have definitely been worse. My dad showed up, first responders there, and that honesty thing, that integrity thing, came up here where the first responder, he's like, hey man, you need to chill out. Like I was pacing. It was a little bit of rain that night, and he's like, "You need to chill out." And I'm like frustrated, whatever. He's like, Sit back in the car." If you've ever smelled an airbag that's gone off, it smells like chemicals, like just the worst chemicals. Just burns your nose. It's not fun. So I told him like I can't sit in there. So he naturally, it's like 3 a.m. I'm alone. I'm 17 years old, and he's like, have you been doing any drugs? Like, have you been drinking? And I'm like, no, man, like I haven't. And I hadn't. That was the God's honest truth. But he kept telling me and kept coming back to the question to the point where I got frustrated. And he's like, you seem to be acting a little different. And I was like, no, motherfucker. Like, I cussed at him. So my parents show up and he tells them, with me standing there, I think he's been doing some extracurriculars. He needs to go
Mm.
home and sleep this off. And my dad looked at me and he said, son, have you been drinking? And I said, no, sir. He said, have you been doing drugs? And I said, no, sir. And he looked at my mom and said, "Take him to the hospital." He saved my life right then and there. He didn't ask, "What have you been doing?" He didn't ask, why'd you steal your sister's car? He
Mm,
just asked me, "Have you been drinking? Have you been doing drugs?" And he told me to go to the hospital. Well,
mm,
first responder made my parents sign a piece of paper that said, "We're not taking him. We've assessed him. We think he's fine."
mm,
My mom took me, and they gave me 90 minutes to live. By the time we made it to the hospital, they said, he's got 90 minutes. He's going now. So they put
mm,
me in an ambulance. They drove me up to Charleston, South Carolina, and like it was a whole thing. So if
mm,
that gives you an idea, like, man, I've had some stuff, like all of the things, all of the, maybe it's chemicals, maybe it's not. I don't know what it is inside of me that made me the way that I am, but I learned to appreciate all of it. I learned
mm,
through 6 different schools. I learned through almost dying that night. I learned through having to go to jail. My attorney might as well have been an angel.
mm,
Um, like I got really lucky.
mm,
I got super super lucky, and all of that, I think it it led me to have a desire to succeed. There was always something in me that wanted to succeed, that wanted to have an impact, that just wanted. I guess it wanted. I wanted to be enough.
mm,
And to me, being enough meant business. It meant I had to have money. It meant I needed like money seemed to be the thing. So I had an entrepreneurial pursuit at selling weed, at my pressure washing company. I started an auto detailing company, and it was a lot of as much distraction as I had in school. Same thing with all these businesses.
mm.
Super distracted. When I was a kid, I had no idea. No idea, but I picked up at least one lesson that I could apply to the next one every single time. Every single time.
Mm.
So I'm rambling at this point. Did I answer your question?
No, you did. You did. There's no perfect way to answer any question. I think you and I both know that when we speak, we ramble a lot. Um, so that happened. Was your washing business before or after that?
Before that,
Before that. So and your auto detailing was after that.
after that.
Yeah. Did your sister
Yeah.
forgive you for crashing her car?
I don't know. We still have our issues. Like
Mm,
for anybody who's listening, I'm a completely open book. I don't hold a whole lot back. I realize like everything that pertains to my life could have an impact. Um, there's a quote. I think it comes from AA. I've never been in AA or Alcoholics Anonymous, but I think it's like let your life be someone else's survival guide. So I think
mm,
sharing openly. No, I don't think so. My
mm,
sister and I don't get along well. Um, naturally, I got a lot of attention.
mm,
Not necessarily positive attention, a lot of negative attention, but I got a lot of attention, and we were pretty close in age, 19 months apart. So, older sister, younger kids getting a lot of attention. I imagine she had some resentment there, and it
mm,
definitely showed up. Like, we've had discussions about it, you know?
mm,
So, did she forgive me for that? I think so, because we still talk sometimes, and she's never brought it up.
mm.
Plus, I had a Jeep, she had a Honda Civic. She got my Jeep, so she won in the deal.
Yeah. All right. So that happens. Um, what next? So just for reference, you ended up running a whole bunch of sales teams. You worked in some really good jobs, but there's one. Remember one story you told me, and it was when you were working with a fella. Yep, a fella, and you had all of these ideas. I remember
Mm,
you told me this story, quite funny. When you was it when you were working in the gym?
no, actually, no. So I'm gonna give you. There's stories. I have stories about each one of these pieces of my life. I'm gonna jump the timeline just a little bit.
Mm,
So I have a red Ferrari story at 16. So pressure washing 15, 16 red Ferrari story. A stranger comes into my life. We had a 30-second conversation about how do I get a car like that. Short version, he said, move to a big city, get your hand in on as many transactions as you can. So, 18 years old, after the car accident, I moved to Atlanta. What ends up happening, I get a job in fitness, selling gym memberships, actually,
Mm.
front desk guy, almost fired because I can't sit still. We got to use your energy somewhere else, promoted to sales, end up doing really well in fitness because I met a mentor at the gym. Pivotal moment, pivotal person. One of
Mm.
these gurus who we would now, work for. Like this is like, or work with rather, keyword there. Um, Works out at the gym that I'm at. And we connected. Funny enough, we connected over weed. Like, hey, you look like you smoke weed. Like, and he was like, yeah, I do. We should hang out. So we end up hanging out. He invites me to a seminar. I go to this seminar, ask him, take me under your wing. Whole thing transpires here. So I learned from him about sales, about marketing, about audiobooks. I learned how to take control of my life. Um, the greatest thing he ever did for me was never answer a single question I asked him. As my mentor, I would ask him a question and he would send me a link to Google. And it was like, bro, you suck so much. But I wanted so badly to learn. I got the point after the 100th time of him doing it. I quit asking him questions and I would Google things. And then we would have a discussion about what I had done. So through all that, I learned websites, I learned SEO, I learned Facebook ads. Actually, yeah, I guess Facebook ads were barely starting to be a thing.
Mm.
Um, in in all of that, I had had a kid, and I don't think I had gotten married. No, I had not gotten married, but I ended up. We split. You stay in the house with the kid. I'm sleeping on my best friend's floor. I needed a job, and I didn't want to go back to fitness because I had a manager who was just the worst human. He was stealing deals from me. He would put people
Mm.
down in front of each other. Like I was done. Quit
Mm.
working out. Left the fitness industry. Excuse me. So I got a job with this dude. He was paying me $100 a week. $100 a week.
$100 a week.
Yeah, that's way below minimum wage.
Yep.
And I was in such a low place, and there was guys there that I knew. It was an automotive repair shop. Like I had mechanic friends. My best friend worked there as a mechanic, and this guy needed some help with computers and websites and stuff. And he was like, "I don't have much. I'll give you $100 a week." So I I took it, like whatever. Like it was such a. I think back about it, like how low of energy I must have been in. What state of mind must I have been
Mm.
in to be like? How much value did I place on me at that time in my life?
Desperate people don't make good decisions though.
Yeah,
They don't, and that's why I tell everyone have options. Be
yeah.
a person where like even now, if you are absolutely crushing it, yes, focus on what's in front of you, but always understand that there are options out there.
Mm. It's we should go into that because I'm in a way different place in my
Mm.
life
Let's
these
pull at the
days.
thread then.
Well, I'll answer your question first. So that guy, the $100 a week guy, I had all the business ideas, all the same ADD, ADHD. I'm armed with websites, knowledge. I know how to use Google. I am far more distracted than I've ever been in my life, trying to figure out I need to do something. I have a kid, and at the time, I wasn't able to see my kid. Like
Mm.
she was being, we did not. We butted heads so hard back then. We
Mm.
co-parent extremely well now. We have an amazing arrangement with our split family, whatever. Um, but I would tell this guy every day, about these ideas and these things we could do. And this guy, I had a guy I could pitch every day, and he would entertain these ideas. And then one day he didn't, and we were riding home from getting lunch together. Uh, he was driving, and this is a big burly son of a bitch. Like,
Mm,
I mean, like his hands were like three times the size of mine. This is a guy who's for 30 years, 40 years has worked on cars. He's a
mm,
mean son of a bitch, and I was still early 20s. So this guy slams his hands on the steering wheel, and he goes, "Would you shut the fuck up?" And I like it made me feel this big, like a tiny little mouse, and I got this lion of a dude over here,
mm,
and I felt so small. Like a tear rolled. Somehow the tear came out of the side, facing away from him. He was driving over here, tear over here, and I was just dead silent. And he was like, "Every day you have something to say about a new idea, a new business, something else that you want to try." He was like, "I don't want to fucking hear it anymore.
mm,
Like, if you're not prepared to go after it, I don't want to hear about it." So he challenged me. He said,
mm,
"I challenge you to pick one thing and go after it until it makes you a millionaire or until it makes you bankrupt." And I hated his guts, the way he delivered it. Like, I'm toning it down because I don't want to yell. Like, my kids
mm,
are home. They would probably think I was losing it if I spoke now the way he spoke to me. Like, terrible. And I hated his guts. And also, I decided to pick one thing, and I picked
mm,
sales. I made my money with sales. I had historically made all my money with sales. I knew if I went all in on sales, I 100% would figure something out.
mm,
So I did. I went all in.
mm.
Now we can go that path, or we can pull on that thread.
Pull on the thread.
Okay, let's pull on the thread. Refresh my memory.
I was hoping you remembered because I got distracted thinking about when I was 16 doing work experience. And I remember I had a similar experience, but he was not a role model. He was a genuine piece of shit human,
Yeah,
just a certified dirtbag. And this is when I thought I wanted to be an auto electrician. And this guy would drive around, and in Australia, like smoking is not. It's like it's a little bit more accepted globally, whereas Australia, it's just not. And this
yeah,
guy was just like me, 16. He was smoking in the car. I'm like, dude, I have asthma. Like, I don't anymore. I grew out of that. And he goes, well, if you have a problem with it, and he pulled over the car on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere, like country. And he said, if you have a problem with it, get the fuck out. And I was like, okay, all right. I can't. I don't deal with bullies. I don't.
yeah,
And that was a moment where I was like, all right, I'll shut up for a minute, get back to the shop, and then for the time that I was there, he'd always try and just stand over me and bully me. And I wasn't small, but he was bigger than me then. And it's I I have such an aversion to people trying to bully someone else. Like, very different
yeah,
situation. Yours was like you need to line it in, whereas with this, it was like, no, mate, not acceptable. And now, so he's the still the auto electrician for my family, the farm. If I go home and he's there, every time and I'm not petty at all.
Do you light cigarettes so you can put them out on his chest, or what?
I rip into him every time I give him, and I'm not polite. And every time my brother and dad have to say, he's up. And he's
Still,
still, yeah,
we
yeah,
should pull on that string.
yeah. No, I hate bullies. I've always hated bullies, and even in any work environment, when someone's tried to stand over me or stand over someone in my team, it's like, no, 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 that's not how we conduct ourselves.
Yeah.
Uh,
Is he
but it's
still the same way?
he's still exactly the same way, but I am not what I was when I was 16. Like, I was a
Yeah.
little bit short, chubby, and insecure at 16. I'm not now. in the slightest. And I've only seen him maybe a half dozen times. And every time I'm not polite, I'm not friendly. And he is the only person in this world that I'm still, I'm petty with. I
Yeah,
am. Yeah.
that's hilarious. All right, fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Mm.
I feel like you should work through that. There may be something there.
I feel like there could be something there. Yeah. So, all right. How did you ultimately reel it in after that? If you had all of these ideas.
So there was a series of mentors along the way,
Mm.
and I met
One thing I
another
need
one.
to acknowledge as well, you said a series of mentors. You have a way of putting yourself in rooms with unbelievably successful people.
You like
And I
that?
know other people don't get to see this, but you just send me a picture. You're with half a dozen people that I see up in lights, or I've listened to their podcasts, or I've seen their content, or I've seen their masterminds, and you just got a picture hanging out with them, enjoying yourself, changing someone's tire, just doing all of these sort of things. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
You just connect with all of these people.
So, man, have you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People?
I have.
Yeah, it's a classic. Like
Mm,
millions of people have read this book. Remember the first mentor who's kept sending me the Google links. The first when I asked him to take me under his wing, he gave me my first audiobook. It was Chet Holmes,
mm,
How to Be a Sales Superstar, which
mm.
I've Googled the title. I cannot find that title. I'm certain that's what the book was, but all I can find is the Ultimate Sales Machine and some of these other things.
Do you
Now,
want to just quickly? Do you want to do me a solid and mute your Slack because it's
yeah, I
kicking off?
was hoping they would be quiet, but I have a sales team that's just closed a handful of deals, and they're all congratulating each other. Um, Give me one sec. And now it appears to be frozen.
Of course.
They've overloaded it with sales. And for me, there we go. Pause until tomorrow. That'll work. Okay, that should be the last one. Um, so he gave me that audiobook, and his feedback, his response when I said, "Will you take me under your wing?" was listen to the audiobook 3 times and implement without question, and I'll think about mentoring you. And it was like, bet, deal. I was motivated enough. I would have been 18, maybe 19 at the time.
Mm.
And I was all in. I was dead last in sales. I was the worst guy on the whole team. He gave me that book. I listened to it my 3 times and I implemented like a madman. Every single thing that I sensed where I could implement something from the book, I did it. From first names, from the cadence and tones and I mean everything.
Mm.
And I took the number one spot in 30 days. That 30 days was all it took. And what I realized was the information was always there. It always existed. I just didn't have it. And
Mm.
just because I got the information didn't mean I was doing anything with the information. So if I took more information and implemented without question, it would stand to reason I should be able to get more results. So that's what I started to do. I continued over and over and over. Well, eventually I came across How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm.
And I did the same thing. And I implemented relentlessly. And I've done that with pretty much everything. Eventually you realize some of the books are full of garbage and you should
Mm.
not implement everything you learn.
A question for you, just while we're on that.
Yeah.
There is an absolute abundance of information, coaching, training, resources out there at the moment. And I'm
Yeah.
connecting with so many people that are overwhelmed with just the sheer volume of content out there.
Yeah. You
If
want to know
if
how to get past that?
how do you know? How do you know what to do? Because uh, the kind of books that were around when you would have been reading this, even 5, 7 years ago, they were the old gold. How to Win Friends and Influence People, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, some Brian Tracy books, which for me, the first time I listened, were mind blowing. But
Yeah.
how does someone decipher what to actually do? Because there's so much information out there.
So Naval Ravikant,
Mm,
a super famous venture capitalist here in the United States. If he's not a billionaire, he's close. In his book, The Almanac of
hmm
Naval Ravikant,
hmm
he says, start with the old gold. Like go all the way back to the original works.
mm,
Start there. Everything after that, those people, and I firmly believe this. There's probably exceptions, but even that I feel not safe saying.
mm,
Everybody learned from the old greats. And if they didn't learn from the old greats, then they learned from somebody who learned from the old greats.
mm,
So if you just go backwards to the old greats, you start there, you'll know what you go to a Brian Tracy book. Millions of salespeople have studied Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Chet Holmes. When you go through those, if millions of people have been successful off of it for $19 or whatever a book or an audiobook costs for you to get, you could probably get a ton of stuff from Chet Holmes.
mm.
When he passed away, his family released a ton of his information for free on YouTube. Um, so,
Or you could just go to ChatGPT or Claude and ask
yeah,
because it knows everything anyway. Teach me,
yeah.
teach me.
So if you start with the old tried and true information,
Mm,
and then go through the stuff that's newer, that's more modern, what you'll find is most of it is some bastardization or regurgitation of old material. Like I'm to this day, even my material, I didn't learn it. Here's what's crazy. I have never studied David Sandler. I have one of his books. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar.
mm,
I have that book. I've only ever been through like 2 chapters, and I never made it any further because I get distracted. A lot of people tell me I sell just like Sandler. A lot of people. I know Sandler works. It's the largest sales training program in the world. If you want to talk about our little bubble we have here, Sandler does 500 million a year
mm,
in sales training, selling sales training. They have a lot of people who have successfully used Sandler training to increase their revenues and grow their sales performance and blah blah yada yada. I used to get so mad at all of these sales programs and sales trainings. The reason I don't have a sales training today, I do, but I don't promote it heavily, is because I know that even my material is regurgitations of other people's things. And
mm,
that's a self-worth thing that even I have to deal with because it hits me. Someone like Ryan Stewman, who I'm openly against everything he stands for. He's he is the only guy I'm openly against everything he stands for. Even he's selling so much sales training that it's changing people's lives. And I cannot take away from the fact that he's doing more with his skills and his talents than I'm doing with mine.
mm,
But it used to bug me so much because I've been through his and I've seen it's a regurgitation of stuff you could get for $19.
mm,
And I always felt, why should I sell it? Why should I package this if I could just recommend the 4 or 5 books that got me where I am? And then one day it clicked for me, well, because I've done 17,000 sales conversations. I've been through it. I've learned the nuance, and there's people who would love to learn from me.
mm,
And that if I have the opportunity, if I have an audience who's willing to learn from me, then who am I to hold on to that information? I could give it away, and I have. I've made a lot of money giving stuff away. Um, But to answer your question, start with the old books.
Mm. But if you look at anyone's sales style, even mine, I have a foundation of, I would probably say, Sandler. The framework that I follow. But then if that's the foundation, laid
Mm-hmm.
in on top of that are all of these different things I've learned along the way from different systems, different processes, different people. And if I look at
Yeah.
it as a framework, I understand what has to happen for a sale to happen, where the conversation has to go, what we have to tick off. And that allows me to
Yeah.
kind of settle into authentically me. But even now, authentically me is all of these kind of things that I've learned. And the
Mm-hmm.
icing on the top is layering in things like NLP. That again, if you follow the bouncing ball, teacher to teacher to teacher, it all will
Mm-hmm.
end up in a very similar spot. I just think it's people's interpretations and connections that they make between things and just how they put their version together. But I don't think that one training is the be all and end all. So I think your hesitation in sharing it with the world, it's not saying that you're the master. That might be that extra 1 to 2%
Yeah.
that that person
You,
gets. You
you know
might
what the
have
other.
one line and people are like, "Oh, that's good."
Oof. Yeah. Well, a lot of my stuff that I anchor to that helps me in sales are one liners.
Mm,
Not one liners that I say to people, one liners quotes that I was able to create foundations from. For instance,
mm,
if they say it, it's true. If I say it, I have to defend it.
mm,
Like this has been passed around. I have no idea where it originated from. I know where I learned it was from Jason Canigan. But if they say it, it's true. If I say it, I have to defend it. The
mm.
implication is I shouldn't make statements. I should ask questions. Because if I ask questions, they'll make statements. And if they make statements, then that's their truth. And then they'll have to defend it.
Yep.
So that one quote, you can take that into your, put that anywhere in your life and you can use that. Um, so the thing you can't take away from people when they get to a certain level is the number of repetitions that they have. There is no substitute for
There's no
repetition.
substitute.
And when I look at when I look at these young folks and they go out and they have hardly a foundation. They have no idea what their foundation even is. They've been through a training. That's the first one. And is it good? I think their material, like Michael Dunleavy's, uh, Cole Gordon's, like I actually have a huge amount of respect for Cole in terms of his ability to teach and to articulate a message. I'm not
Mm,
a huge fan of the business model, but Cole is a freaking rock star. Like he still holds records for my company was 123 enrollment. Cole, he closed his first 5 conversations on a brand new offer he'd never sold before, all paid in fulls. Boom, 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 boom. His first 5 calls in a single day. And it was like, wow. Like I've seen people pull hat tricks and stuff. I'd never seen 5 in a row. Did he get lucky? I don't think so because there were 2 other guys on the team and they couldn't do the same thing. And
mm.
they all got leads from the same place. There might have been a smidge of luck, but dude's a monster. And he teaches all of that sort of stuff. There's great sales training out there, but the repetition,
Mm.
you cannot comprehend. I don't believe you can fully comprehend what you've learned in a classroom until you've done it.
There's a this is something that I've been articulating a little bit more recently. That there are two sides to sales, and actually, I shared this in a. I was brought on to basically run a session in a mastermind, it's actually in the high ticket space, and I said there are two sides to sales. You
Mm-hmm.
have the sexy stuff, you have the lines, you have the things that people say. You listen to someone else's call and think, oh yeah, I'm going to use that, like that's the cool stuff. But
Yeah.
then you have the not so sexy side, and that is the fear of rejection. That is the rejection itself. That is the repetition. That's the cold calling. That's that fear of like, oh, I actually hope this person doesn't pick up because I don't want to have another conversation. The only way
Mhm.
around is through. You have to go through that. And it's only once you get past that point of discomfort. It's only once you get past that point of I actually really hope this person does pick up. And if someone yells at me, I know it's not about me. They're probably having a bad day. And I actually remember the last guy that screamed at me on a sales call. I've got the recording. I'll send it to you. Um, his wife opted in for some information. He was a builder, and what was her name, Leah or something like that. And I just said, hey, James here. I had this number for Leah, and he goes, who the fuck are you, and why are you calling my wife? And I said, well, actually, Leah opted in to receive a call from us. Now he was the businessman, and one of two things were happening. At least that's what we suspected on the team when I shared it around. Is one, maybe Leah was being a bit cheeky and he was suspicious, or two, he was upset that Leah was seeking support for his business. And he kicked off. He's going absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and this is how separated I was from feeling it. And I just said, you seem frustrated. And then he just went off on this massive tirade, just like grown ass man, just screaming down the phone. I don't give a fuck if you're this or this. Don't you fucking call my wife. All right, mate. No worries. Have a good day. And I got off and I laughed. I laughed. I still have the recording. I'll send it to you after this. And
Yeah.
I just remember hopping off that call thinking, if that was even a year ago, I probably would have been a little bit, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. No,
Yeah.
not even a
Yeah.
little bit.
You
That's
know
the
what?
last time someone screamed at me and it didn't affect me in the slightest. Made my day.
So I have two thoughts right now. One, I remember we're Facebook friends now. Uh, Angela, I won't divulge her last name. We got onto a call and she was being the biggest bitch. Like, I mean, like I was the scum of the earth. She opted in. It was her.
Mm-hmm.
And she filled out the application. This is a standard high ticket funnel, inbound lead. She shows up. She knows why she's there. There was no confusion, but she had this guard up. Not even a guard. Just I'm insulted. You're below me, an attorney. Uh, and I remember, I guess I had made it to a point. So here's the second piece. We'll go back to Angela in just a sec. Open loop. So when I was in gyms, my manager, my first job selling gym memberships, my manager complimented me. I'll take it as a compliment. He said to me one time, actually, he said to someone in front of me about me, Robert has a really unique ability to tell someone to go fuck themselves and they'll thank him for it. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about you saying that to a person that's not me, but I also felt good about it.
Mm-hmm.
So they used to, anytime there was disgruntled members, they would give them to me because for some reason I would have the ability to like calm down. Like I'm told I have an easy voice to talk to. I would calm people down, and I, as a young man, thought it was the most fun as a sales guy to take somebody who's pissed and try to get more money from them. So I got used to getting my teeth kicked in, and started to make it a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
When you get thrown into that, like real customer service where people are angry and you've got to be the guy to like get them down to a like stable ground and then walk them through. I don't actually have a solution for that, but are you going to be living in the area for much longer? It's like we should extend your membership. So in either case, I used to get my teeth kicked in. And I think that the customer service side and getting my teeth kicked in made me resilient
Mm-hmm.
for all the other types of sales. So Angela was being an absolute monster to me. And I remember I set my expectations for how the call was supposed to go. She went high D personality and she was like, look, I don't need all this. Just tell me how much it is and what exactly it is that I'm buying. And I was like, whoa, like, hang on. Number one, I was put in this position because the powers that be believe I have the ability to help guide you through a conversation, I'm great at asking questions. My job's to make sure that before you spend money, we know we can actually do something for you, blah, 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 blah. And she went even harder into me. And I was like, Angela, can we pause for just a second? And she was like, what? And I was like, I just think we should pause. Like right now, we're supposed to be having a conversation. It's supposed to be a sales conversation. We're supposed to be like helping you find a solution for your business. I feel like we need to pause that. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I just need to ask, like, are you okay? And she was livid. She was so angry at me. So I was like, no, like I'm genuinely asking, like, are you okay? Because I came to this call with a good energy, good vibe, here to help. And I feel like you're being mean. And I don't know that I've done anything to deserve that. And I would just like to make sure, like, I'm okay, but I just want to make sure you're okay. And she hated it. And then she
Mm.
started cussing me up one side and down the other. And I was like, Angela, you tell me that you're fine. You won't let me run the call the way that I run it. I've been put into this place to make sure I both protect you as a customer and my company as well. If you're not willing to follow the process that we have, then as a parent, we're not going to be able to help you. And then she started demanding, just tell me how much it is. And I'm like, it doesn't matter because we've decided like we're not going to move forward with you. And she goes even harder. And I'm like, Angela, the call's over. We're done here. And I ended up messaging Jay, the guy who ran the funnel at the time, told him about it. Like confirmed, we didn't want her in the
Yep.
call. But yeah, there was definitely a place. Like if it's you have to go through some of that in order to really understand the other personality on the personality on the other end of the phone. You have to understand
Mm.
why we say what we say, and if you don't see the extremes of it, then it's harder to see the nuance in between the extremes.
Mm. But the more you do it as well, the less it happens because
Yeah,
you're not asking permission to run the call the way you need to. It's more, this is what we're going to do on the call. This is what it'll look like. This is where we could end up. And when you get
yeah,
people like that, I find that the ones that are like, I'm going to get onto the call and I'm going to do exactly what I want. They're just a salesperson. 99% of them will fall into line as long as you have an interesting frame at the start of a
yeah.
call. But one of my friends, he runs teams in, well, up until recently, it wasn't sales teams. It was basically factory production teams,
Yeah.
and a lot of unions and a lot of people that did not much, and they would complain, and their response to everything in the light with the last managers was to yell. And his favorite
Mhm.
line is they'd come into his office and they'd start yelling straight away. He'd put his hand up, say stop. He'd say, "Is this how you usually conduct yourself?" And they had this mirror held up straight away. Well, like, well, no. Then why are you yelling at me?
Yeah.
Well, I just. Do you need help? Yes. What do you need help with? And that one line, is this how you usually conduct yourself? If someone is being an idiot and irate, mirror, like straight away, it just shuts them up.
Yeah.
Absolutely shuts them up. Um, there's a few others, but they are deliberately antagonistic. So,
So I'll pull on. I'll take that string and run with it for just a second. So one of my mentors, further along, maybe mid, I don't know, like 23, 24, somewhere in there. I had already committed all the way in on sales,
mm,
and a mentor knew that about me, and he reaches out and he tells me about this dude from Australia, Gulliver Giles. I
mm,
think he's in
the second
Victoria.
best salesman in Australia.
Yeah, the absolute best salesman in Australia, hands down. So,
Second best. Yeah.
so Gulliver taught me sales was about love, and about respect.
Mm.
At this seminar, I committed to going to this seminar. A lot of lessons to be told from this. I was dead broke at the time. Remember, I'm just off the back of making $100 a week. I'm trying to get my footing. I go back into gym membership sales. I'm committed to selling, and I went back to what I knew. And I end up promising him if he ever has an event in the United States, I'll pay. I'll go. I got a credit card, no joke. Like it was like that previous day, it came in the mail. I didn't even open it because I didn't want to use it. It was for bills and things. I could feel it in the envelope. I knew it was my card. Gulliver calls me the next day. Like the timing, it had to have been some sort of universal, like this needs to happen, serendipitous type deal. So he's like, I'm going to do my best impression here. He's like, Robert, what's going on, mate? He's like, going to be in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm like, oh my God, not now. Like, please, not right now. I didn't say that. That's what I was feeling. I was like, well, that's awesome, man. How much is the event? Like, what's it going to take? And he's like, it's 2,500 bucks. So 2,500 bucks. It was three days plus flight plus hotel. And I know one of those secrets to getting into those special rooms, always stay at the same hotel as
Mm.
everybody else. Don't get the cheap hotel, spring for the nice hotel,
Mm.
figure it out, sit at the bar, hang out, whatever, whatever, whatever. So, anyways, I booked the nice hotel, JW Marriott, Scottsdale, Arizona, Camelback Inn, I think it's called. Um, and I maxed my credit card out. It had a $7,500 limit between his event and the hotel, maxed my credit card out. So that was when I learned about investing in high ticket programs and what they could do for you. So I invest, I go out. Day one, people around me are crying, they're having breakthroughs. I mean, everybody's leveling up, and like the energy in the room was like, like I want this. Like, why don't I feel this? And I was taking great notes. I mean, everything was next level. I was
Mm.
already a top producer, and it took me to another level. Like Gulliver is, he's solid. He's very very good. Um, at dinner, I'm sitting next to President Barack Obama's social media manager, and she's like, "Are you getting everything out of this that you hoped for?" And I was like, "I'm really not. Like, I mean, I'm getting good information, but like, I want a breakthrough." And she was like, "Well, why'd you come?" And I had to take a minute and think about it. So, on the way out to Scottsdale, I'm sitting in an airplane. Now, at the time, I couldn't afford to fly; like that was a rarity. And I was so proud, even though I was putting myself into debt. I was so proud that I had bought this plane ticket. And my dad calls me. Now, my dad and I have a better relationship now, but he's the type of guy who will shit all over anything you've got going on. Why would you do that? So he calls me, and I answer, and I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna tell him I'm on this airplane. I'm going to Scottsdale. It's for a training. He's gonna be pumped that I'm doing something to benefit myself. I tell him, and he's like, why would you go to Scottsdale for sales training? And I'm like, well, because there's a guy from Australia coming. And he's like, you could have gotten sales training at the local community college for a lot cheaper. And he was like, Dad, but not from this guy. And I'm trying to justify it, but not from this guy.
Mm.
And he goes, whatever, call me when you get back. And I felt so let down. I
Mm.
mean, like I cried on an airplane by myself, all the way in the back of the airplane, mind you. Like perfect setting for some tears. So when Jen asked me if I got everything I needed from the event, I answered that I wanted a breakthrough. And she was like, okay, well, why'd you come? And I told her, like, I really just want my dad to be proud of me. Like,
Mm.
I genuinely wanted my father to be proud of me. And in that moment, it was the thing that was the response that came out of my mouth. Before that, let me finish what she said. She said, "Who cares?" And I was like, mind boggled. Like, what do you mean? It's my dad. Like, I care. And she was like, yeah, but who cares? Like, are you here because you want to prove this to him, or are you here because you want to prove it to yourself? And it clicked. In that moment, I had never given myself any credit. I had
Mm,
never given any thought to how I felt about my outcome. Everything I had done up to that point was to make the teachers happy, make my parents happy, make sure everyone around me liked me. But I had never taken any consideration as to whether or not I liked me or whether or not the decisions I was making were beneficial to me.
mm,
Wouldn't you know, those high D personalities, the ones that mess you up on the beginning of your sales call, wouldn't you know those guys are just like dad? Wouldn't you know, when one of those guys challenges you, you just want them to like you. You just want their approval. You just
mm,
want them to be proud of you. You want them to think that you are valuable. Before that moment, those guys used to mess me up so
mm,
badly at the beginning of calls. And when I made the decision to do sales for me, when Jen gave me that breakthrough, and dude, I'm a crier. I was pouring tears at dinner. I got my breakthrough. It wasn't from Gulliver, it was from her.
mm,
And ever since then, there has been very few people who can stop me dead in my tracks. Very few.
mm,
Because I don't do this for them. Like, I'm in service to them. I care about them. I care about their outcome. But at the end of the day, I care more about my integrity, about my character. I care about why I show up and what I'm doing this for. The
mm,
people whose lives could be impacted. Can that be one of them? Sure. And I'm going to have a real conversation with them and let them know I'm the right guy. I have a process. People pay me very well to be in the shoes, to be able to serve and to help you. And if you're not interested in that, then I'm okay with that. No
mm.
problem. Those aren't the real words I would use necessarily, but it's not far off. So I don't know. I'd love to give takeaways, and I hope if anybody's listening to this and you're not showing up for yourself, I hope that that's the one takeaway you get.
Mm, mm. Isn't that interesting? The kind of people that were giving you a hard time was directly representative of the kind of things that you were beating yourself up about.
Yeah.
Mm,
It was like looking at my dad through the phone. And they were
mm.
always the same age and they were the same tone of voice and super sharp.
I
The
think
only
that here's an understanding that I have though.
Yeah.
I I'm not one of those in that I'm going to be rude to you, but
Mhm.
also if I'm on a call for something, I've already done my research. I
Mhm.
just need to tick a few boxes, and I'm always really polite with salespeople. But it's just, look, I'm probably going to be the easiest sale you can ever imagine. This is what I know so far. This is what I need to know. Can you answer those questions for me? Yes, I'm definitely price qualified. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
We can follow your process if you want, but at the end of the day, we can expedite this really quickly. This is all that I need to know, and yes, I'm good to go within the
Yeah.
next 5 minutes.
Yeah, and but there's a point with when you get to a certain level in sales, and Mike teaches this, lead with price.
Mm,
Talk about it. If you're at a point in your sales career where you can identify that the person across from you is telling you the truth, if you can, you're at a point in your sales career where you can have a conversation with a high level individual and
mm,
you understand that both of you are speaking truth,
mm,
it's very easy to share price up front. Back in gym memberships, we never share price over the phone, right? I remember that lesson. Never. And I learned how to set appointments and I learned how to challenge people on appointments. And I learned it was a great lesson to be
mm,
able to have the skill set not to share price up front. I learned a lot through that. But later I got to a point where when I'm dealing with someone like you, if I'm selling to someone like you, or to some of these clients that I deal with now, I pretty well lead with the price. Like,
But it's a different time now. Even when I was selling gym memberships, we would
yeah,
try not to share the price over the phone, but you could hide it then. Whereas now, if I get on a sales call, I know what it costs. I've already found that out. It's so easy to actually find what it's very rare that you can't find a price. Um, but I love negotiating with salespeople. It's so much fun. There's never any like even the putting the solar on this house, negotiating with the solar guys. I had a ball. And everybody wins if you do it
yeah.
that way. But covering price up front, I think that the most of the people that are really against it, they don't know how to do it. And there's a big difference between it doesn't work and I don't know how to do it successfully. And maybe they tried
Let,
it once or twice, or
let
maybe
me pose a question.
okay.
I'm going to pose. This is a genuine question. We're learning together. So I watched a video of Joe Polish yesterday, and
Mm,
I know we're both big fans of Joe Polish. Um, Somebody asked him, "How do you determine what to sell? What price you should sell your product for?" And his response was, "Your price point is directly correlated to your ability to sell it."
mm,
And I was like, "Touche, Joe." Like, yeah, it is. And I think being 18 selling gym memberships and having zero confidence to be able to sell gym memberships that very first few months,
mm,
I definitely could not have, like, even $35 a month. Like, I couldn't afford $35 a month at that time. Not in my head. I probably could have come up with it if it was important enough, but those are lessons you learn later.
mm,
But my ability to sell it, I had fear. I had confidence issues. So
mm.
do you think that there's some merit to what Joe says there? That if we're selling gym memberships today, 100%, I'd sell it for $35 a month, $200 a month, whatever the program. Some of these boutique fitness places, $200-300 a month.
Mhm.
I think I would be really confident selling price up front. Whereas back in the day, probably not. And I wonder, do you think that there's a correlation that maybe the correlation of my ability then and my ability now? I think so.
Absolutely. And that's why you don't usually see many 18, 19 year olds selling the kind of masterminds that Joe Polish would go into.
Yeah.
Because the idea of dropping a 25, 35, 50K price tag, like the idea of $50,000 at that age, depending on the childhood that you had,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like that's a year's income. That's what your parents would potentially make in the space of a year. And this guy, he's gonna drop it in
Right
one
now?
transaction,
Yeah.
and you hear them deliver it. It's and I've listened back to a lot of sales calls, and people are apologetic in delivering the price. Oh,
Hmm.
it's just $2,000. There's
Yeah.
so much anxiety around the price, but then
Dude,
it's all about the positioning and the kind of question you're asking. It's not this is the price, will you buy it? It's
yeah.
this is if I were to tell you that this is the price, is that something that you could do should you decide you want to?
Yeah. So I have a sales rep right now, actually the one who was just closing a deal.
Mm,
I don't know what size deal he closed, but I can tell you that was a lower ticket offer that on August 1st, 5 days ago, 4 days ago, we raised the price to a 5K and we stacked on a 10K or 12K offer on the back end of that. Up until 3 weeks ago, he had never sold anything more than $1,500.
mm,
That was it. That was the highest ticket that he had sold. And he had a lot of language. A lot of our conversations were very much that apologetic, like, I don't know, man. Like, are we doing enough? Like, he always wanted to do more and more
mm,
and more for these customers for this $1,500 price point, and that's 1,500 for a year long membership. And we raised the price to 5K, and he was like, I don't know, man. He melted down for 2 weeks. melted down. Like we thought we were going to lose the guy. Um, and then he just closed, I don't know, he's tracking 60K for the month, which for him and for this offer, he's only a couple weeks into that price point. And now he's sold a $7,500 paid up front, 4,500. We did a sales blitz for all of our members that wanted to retain the $1,500 price point. We allowed them to buy 3 years or lifetime for 4,500 or 7,500.
Mm.
And he was like, I don't know, man. Do you think people are going to buy it? I was like, yes, they're going to buy it. Just call the people and present it confidently. They'll buy.
Mm.
He got his first one, and he called me, and he was like ecstatic and celebrating. He's called me 8, 9, 10 times in the last 2 weeks, celebrating. I got another one. So today, when we had our sales meeting, I congratulated him in front of the whole team. I believe acknowledgement is a really, really important thing, and I did it because I wanted to solidify in him the change.
Mm.
He changed, but does he recognize how important the change is? He's never, ever, ever again from August 1st forward, he will never be the guy who can only sell $1,500 products.
Mm.
He's now sold 7,500. He hasn't closed the 10K yet, but he's close. So I acknowledged him in front of the whole team. And I basically welcomed him through his initiation into higher ticket. And
Mm.
I congratulated him on finding a little bit extra self-worth. Like he
Mm.
literally will never be the same person again. He's changed. So,
But that's something people don't pay much attention to.
no.
They'll come in and they'll start selling a couple $100 things, and they want to jump straight to a 25K solution, and then only work a few hours a day.
Yeah.
This is that repetition thing, and this is that process that we were speaking about. To get to that, even we'll say 50K. To get to
Yeah.
50K, you have to have first sold 25K. And to get to 25K, you have to have first sold 15. And to get to
Yeah.
15, 10. And then to get to 10, you have to have first sold 5. So if you're selling $1,000 or a $1,500 product now, don't go thinking about the 50K offer.
Mm-hmm.
Start thinking about, how do I start selling 5K offers and be able to hold a conversation coherently and successfully there? Then how do I transition that to 7.5 to 10? And then once you're at 10, you're like, oh, this is a little bit of a different conversation. I'm going to jump to 15s, which changes again. And then when you get to the 25, it's kind of like, oh, this is how it is.
Yeah.
Oh, this is how it is. And then when you get to those conversations past probably 25 to 75, most of them are pretty similar.
Have you ever heard of resetting your financial thermostat?
We talked about this.
Yeah. It's a super, super, super real thing.
Mm.
I went through it. I still go through it. I'm keenly aware of it, and I still go through it. Mechanic with the broken car, maybe you could liken that to. I went from making $100 a week to now much, much more than that. I'm like I'll share openly. I have clients that pay me $10,000 a month to consult with their sales teams and to consult with all of their revenue streams, marketing, sales, anything to do with revenue or rev ops. Um, and also now profit shares and equity, and
Mm.
I get a piece of the exit and all kinds of stuff like that. That never, I was terrified to ask for those things. I'm still like, the next one for me probably is like the $150,000. Pay me all that cash up front at one time. That's probably the next level for me. Like that's the one I think I need to crack next. But
Mm.
the financial thermostat, what happens when you have a salesperson or any person, they're used to making $5,000 a month and they spend $4,000 a month, they've got $1,000 left over. The thermostat, think about the thermostat inside of your house. Its job is to regulate temperature. If it's too hot, it kicks the AC on, it cools the house down. If it's too cold, it kicks the heater on, it warms the house up. And it puts you back to a comfort level. Well, we all have, through circumstance and experience and whatever made up our lives, we have a financial comfort zone. So you're making five, you're spending four, you got a grand left over, you probably blow that too somehow, some way. Most likely you're not saving it. So then you have your first $10,000 month. You celebrate, you hold on, maybe you hold on to it, you've got good intentions, you hold on to it for a month or two. Eventually it goes away, and the 10K months, they're not consistent yet. Or maybe they are consistent. So you get your third one in a row and you think to yourself, man, I'm tired of this car.
Mm.
I really want to drive a BMW, a Mercedes. I want to upgrade my truck. So you got a new apartment. You're trying to match the lifestyle. Next thing you know, you still have $1,000 left over. You're doing potentially more work, spending more, and ending up with exactly the same. So really, nothing changes in your life. You're just doing more work. It's more effort. You're putting more in to get the same amount. So that exercise, I'll send it to you if I haven't already. You're definitely welcome to look through it. Sorry, gotta call the kids before bedtime. So the idea behind this financial thermostat is you walk someone through an awareness exercise where you teach them, you have you ask the right questions so that they'll speak out loud things like the best monthly income they've ever had, what their current monthly income. So what we're doing is we're creating a gap between the best you ever had and where you are currently. Then we're talking about, tell me about your best, like what would an ideal day look like for you? Your perfect day. If you reached your ideal income, what would that look like for you? Write it down. And we have them write their senses. What does the coffee smell like? Where did they wake up? What's the view when they wake up? Who's next to them? What are the smell, like everything. So they get some sensory activation.
Mm.
There's research that shows that just because you're imagining it, your brain can't tell the difference in actually experiencing it versus imagining it. So it becomes a very real experience when you write this thing down. So then you have them walk through the good things that are to come if they can hit this monthly income. Now we've got them soaring way up here. So the very next thing that we do is list out all the bad things if you never reached your potential. If you never reached your dream income, what are all the bad things in your life currently that you're never going to realize unless you do something different? So they list all these things out. Like, I'm behind on bills. I don't have a car to drive. I want to retire my mom and I'll never get the chance to do that. Right? These things are real. I had a guy, he was crying. We do this live in person with sales teams. And he was crying because his wife was cheating on him. And she was cheating on him because he had never owned up and became the provider she needed. Like, there's
Mm.
probably a slew of other things, but a lot of times that masculine and that feminine, that energy, he wasn't providing what she needed, and so she sought it somewhere else.
Mm.
She didn't have the courage necessarily to let him down and to divorce him and separate the kids. So instead she did the easier thing. She cheated.
Mm.
So I've seen stuff like that come out. Very emotional stuff. Then we have them write a letter. Uh, we write a letter from ourselves. This ourselves in the future, knowing we never reached our goal, and you're writing to yourself now. What would you tell yourself? And they write this letter to themselves. And I've seen people get angry. I've seen people cuss their younger selves out. I've seen people have heart to hearts. I've seen other people who didn't really give a damn.
Mm.
But when you get them to create that separation and it becomes a very real thing that you're not doing enough, now the work gets to show up. Now the action comes in. So what are you prepared to do? So
Mm.
we finish by helping them create real affirmations based on what's going on in their very real life. So everyone gets a personalized affirmation, which, by the way, in my opinion, worked very well. They did for me.
Mm.
So you are able to attach your self worth to, we do it with an action or a set of actions, and we do it with a character trait, and we do it with an income amount that they believe that they deserve. So when you have the character and you have the actions and then you have the financial piece, now you're speaking to yourself the character it would take for you to achieve it. You're speaking to yourself the actions it would take for you to achieve it, and you're
Mm.
speaking the amount. So mine, for instance, is I'm Robert Posey and I am integrity. I practice consistent, focused follow through because that is who I am. I practice consistent, focused follow through while earning $100,000 per month because that is who I am.
Mm.
So that affirmation becomes that must be who I am. If you say it enough, our thoughts become our beliefs become our actions become our reality. So when you can give somebody at least the
So
thought
that's
they
like
can.
Robert, is it Robert Dilts's neurological levels model? So the only thing beyond identity is spirituality and beliefs. So working up. Are you familiar with Dilts's model?
I don't think so. I need to be.
I'll Robert
Yeah,
Dilts.
you should type that out because your Australian accent makes it hard for me to understand what you just said.
So, uh, so you have basically a pyramid. Imagine kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yeah.
and so then you have. Of course, it goes to a website. So at the top, you've got. Oh no! So I got it the wrong way around. So you've got purpose, then you've got identity, then you've got values, beliefs, then you've got skills, behavior, and environment, and
Hmm.
essentially all of them feed into the previous one. And this is essentially how you can break down someone's being. So if you were to pull apart the neurological layers of someone using this model, you can essentially not replicate who they are, but have essentially a description of who that individual is, what they do. But
Yeah.
it's your purpose and then your identity and then your values and beliefs ultimately
Hmm.
underpin the skills, the behaviors, and the environment that you end up in.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool. I need to read into it.
I've got some really cool stuff to show you with that, but I won't do that on here.
Did I tell you about the experiment with the cat? Well, I guess it's an experiment with a rat, and there is a cat.
Mm,
So there's a guy in the roofing space, Adam Binsman. He's got a phenomenal program. He's a very, very well respected sales trainer. We were chatting the other day. You know, everybody's heard the experiment with the rat treading water. You
mm,
familiar with that?
yeah.
Right? For anybody who's not, the rat treads water. It lasts like 19 minutes and then the rat drowns. Pardon, forgive me for killing animals on James' podcast. So the next rat they put in, same thing happens. Next one, they figured 19 minutes is about the threshold. So right before the 19-minute mark, they drop a little ladder in and the rat climbs out. They let it rest. They put it back in the water. The second time, the rat treads water for like 19 hours.
Hmm.
Something insane.
I think it was 22 hours.
22 hours, even more insane. So 22 hours because there is an inkling of hope. There's just one little thing to look forward to. So Adam tells me about a different experiment, one I had never heard of before. So still a rat. This time the tube is not filled with water, but the rat only has one direction to go. So they put we'll assume an animal safe clamp on the tail of the rat. Attached to that, a spring, and attached to that, a device for measuring force exertion. How much
Mm,
force did this rat pull? So they starve these rats, sorry, and they put a little piece of cheese or food at the other end. So the rat has no choice but to go down the tube in order to get to the cheese while measuring the force exerted. A rat trying to get to a piece of cheese exerts so much force. I don't remember. I didn't read it. I'm just going off of a discussion from yesterday. So they take that rat, second experiment. This time they put a cat behind the rat. Wouldn't you know it? The rat exerted like 7 times more
Mm.
force trying to get away from the cat than it did trying to get towards the cheese. Now, I don't know if there is direct correlation on everything to do with rat experiments and human beings, but I suppose that there's some similarities. We know about positive motivation, motivation toward pleasure, and we know about motivation away from pain. Isn't it interesting that the people who have a ton of pain and a lot of trauma and these poor experiences tend to be driven, super, super, super driven?
Mm.
So I made a video last night, kind of going through exactly what I just said, and my title of the video is "You're Not Enough." Everyone says you are enough spiritually, and as a human being, I love everybody. You are
Mm.
enough for me to love. Um, but in terms of physical effort, in terms of exertion, in terms of energy, in terms of doing what it takes to get to the end result, I see a lot of people that do a little bit. They do just enough, myself included.
Mm.
Like if I don't have a rat behind me, it's difficult. The cheese isn't always enough for me. But seeing where I could have put my kids in private school, or seeing I run a company and we put so much money into it, we don't earn enough to cover the bills. I don't eat because I have to make payroll. Something like that happens. That cat, I work really hard when that cat shows up.
Mm.
And that's why the title of that video is "You Are Not Enough." I think
Mm.
there's a lot of people who say they want it, but when I see what it actually takes in order to get a result, Rebecca, my boo thing, she was getting beat consistently. She's a high ticket closer. She's very, very good. She was getting beat consistently by this dude on a funnel, 9K offer. And she got mad. She got tired of it. She got really upset. Like, I'm done. He'll never beat me again type vibes. And she committed, if I recall correctly what she did, she committed to listen to 3 sales calls a day. She would do one of the top closers, or a top closer, one of hers, and then one of the closers below her. And she would have a good frame of reference. What is a really great call? What is a not so great call? And what does she sound like? So then she would take that, compile it into an action plan. 90 days, 3 months, 3 calls a day she listened to and implemented on 6 to 7 sales calls a day. And she took the number one spot. She took it from him because she got serious and she put in the work. She did enough.
Mm.
I think
That's
that,
that's the I've heard the expression. I've talked about it a couple of times. That's the region beta paradox. Have you heard of that one?
you told me about
Yeah.
this. Remind me.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
the car. You
the
could
car.
walk. You
Yeah.
could walk or you could drive.
You could walk or you could drive, but essentially you take those people that, I don't like my job, I don't like my partner, I don't like my life, I don't like this. There is a difference between don't like and can't stand. And sometimes, and you'll see this in your friend circle, or at least people that you do know, things have to get a lot worse before they get better. So the job might be bad, but not bad enough for you to leave. Or the relationship might be bad, but not bad enough for you to leave. So
Yeah,
so inversely, conversely, whatever the right expression is, things have to get worse
yeah,
before they get better. And one of my good mates, he was in this job he hated, and he was in there for 7 years, and he was the frog in the boiling water. Started off, he was out of uni, he was an industrial engineer. We all always call him a graphic designer because it jazzes him up. And so he was in this job, and he started off doing his design work. He's a car
uh,
nut. He was working for a car company, and then someone quit, and he took on their job. And then
yeah,
someone else quit, and he took on their job. Now, keep in mind, he was commuting about an hour and a quarter each way. So 2.5 hours a day in the car. He's still working his 14-hour days, and he's doing the job of 3 to 4 people. And every time he's just like, "Yep, I'll do it. Yep, I'll do it."
yeah,
Ball of anxiety, just stressed nonstop. His partner, beautiful girl, just so lovely. she said to me 3 or 4 years ago, she's like, I don't know what to do with him. I don't know. He comes home, he's anxious, he's stressed. We don't spend any time together. He conks out as soon as he's home. And all of this, you'd think if he's taking on all of these jobs, he's going to be on 300K a year. Nah, barely making six figures. And the boss treats him like shit. And he was just, every time I'd see him, he was worse and tense. And you just watched him kind of turn into a shell of a human, but it just
Yeah.
got worse over time. And then in the end, this is probably 3 months ago, he rang me and he said, I've got a job somewhere else. He goes, it's not like, it doesn't have the title, because he was embarrassed to tell me. I said, who cares about the title? Tell me about the job. He goes, it's not more pay. And I said, it doesn't matter. Tell me about the job. And he walked me through the job, and it was an industrial engineer, still in trade kind of. And I was like, mate, that's amazing. Because I'd had a dozen sessions with him where I'd helped him find gigs and done his resume and got him interviews. And I'd done everything I could. And in the end, it just things had to get worse before they got better. And I still remember 2 days later, he rang me and he goes, the old boss has said, you tell me what you need to stay because I can't lose you. And I said, don't you dare. Don't you even think about it. And I saw him a month ago and he was smiling. And for the first time in probably 5, 6 years, smiling, happy, calm, relaxed. He actually looked like he was half baked. That's how relaxed he was. And he went from like in the corner of the room, can't socialize, just overwhelmed, to smiling. And then one of my other friends who was in a job that he hated saw that, and he rang me about a week ago and he said, I saw you and I saw him at the wedding. He said, you guys were laughing, smiling. You were so happy. And he
Yeah.
said, I want that. And he quit and he got another job working not
Nice.
for the next job, but he got a job that he actually wants to enjoy now, because everything's been, this will be the experience for what comes next, but nothing ever good came next. Freedom.
Yeah. Change is only possible on the precipice of destruction. That's another one of those quotes.
Oh. Oh.
You've probably heard it said it another way. Change is only possible when the pain of staying where you are becomes greater than the pain of change. It's just easier and sounds prettier to say. Change is only possible on the precipice of destruction.
So the version that I've never heard either of those, but the version that I say is that a person will only make a change when the perceived discomfort of moving forward is lower than the perceived discomfort of staying still. And the reason that I say that is most of the
Yeah.
time it's not actual discomfort that's going to happen.
Hmm.
It's the perceived discomfort of whatever will happen next that you don't have clarity over.
Yeah. Well,
Yours is way cooler.
we said the same thing basically, but uh, right on the backside of that, another quote: "Perspective or perception is reality until proven otherwise." Your
Mm,
perception is what you're aware of now. That's all you get until you have to make a choice. It's literally a decision. I think the best business people, the best salespeople, the best business people are very good at making decisions. And you have to be, because there's when you're an executive, when you're a business owner, there's a lot of decisions to make. And when you have a team, they're heavy decisions. It's not just you who's going to be affected by your decisions. So that's why I preach clarity and awareness. We're salespeople. We ask other people questions all the time, but we don't spend nearly enough time asking ourselves questions. And I think that introspective nature, some people have it and some people don't. I don't know why one person will have it and another won't. I probably could deduce if I spent a little more time thinking about it. But yeah, it actually probably goes back to that trauma, that empathy. Why is it that you could tell dad's in a bad mood by the way
mm,
his shoes touch the floor?
mm,
You pick up on some of that sort of stuff when you have trauma. You learn certain things to pick up on certain things. And if it's possible that I'm the reason dad's mad, then I'll look inward to make sure I do things differently,
mm,
right? I think we, as a lot of salespeople, a lot of people in general have that. Some people end up with the title of salesperson, but a lot of really phenomenal communicators have the have that little empathetic check mark or checkbox.
Mm,
And I would wager a lot of it goes back to that trauma.
mm,
So when you find that empathy, and you're able to turn it around and look, and maybe give yourself some grace, and apply that empathy to your own life, now you start to be able to ask the right questions, to start getting some clarity, or rather gaining awareness first. Once you have the awareness that, like, question number one, am I where I would like to be?
mm.
Whether that's financial or otherwise. Am I living in the house I want to be? Am I with the girlfriend or boyfriend that I want to be? Am I married to the right person? Am I in the right career? These questions, very easy questions, and some of them have very easy answers. The awareness is, nope, I don't think so, or like, yeah, I'm definitely on the right path.
But it's crazy to
When
me how many people I know that would answer no to all three of those. So
Yeah.
and even you asking me that, it was a reaffirmation that I'm doing the right things. As I love the career that I'm in, I live in a
Hmm.
beautiful home, I've got a fantastic partner, and I
Yeah.
think everything from here. And I remind myself of this regularly. I'm living the life that most people. I live in a tropical paradise. I work with who I want to work with.
Yeah.
I have an amazing partner who is unbelievably supportive and really switched on. I have a great group of friends. I get to live life genuinely on my terms. Like this is what people will work until they're 60, 65 to try and retire to.
Yeah.
Everything else on top of this is just amplification, not replacement, amplification. And there are amazing business opportunities coming at me right now, some of which I'll talk to you when we're not on here. And I
Yeah.
look at all of this and I just think this this is
Yeah.
the
What is
this is
this?
premium life.
Hmm. So
And I
that's important for you too, man. Like when we're living the way that we're living, and like, I don't have a Bugatti. I don't want a Bugatti
I
or a
couldn't
Ferrari.
care.
I'm not into it
I'd love to
anymore.
drive one just once, just to see what it's like.
I've ridden in some fast cars that would, like, actually scared me. Violently fast cars, and it was
Mm,
like, yeah, hell yeah,
mm. So
be
the
cool.
who's that comedian? Cat Williams? Is that his name?
Yeah, that is a comedian.
Yeah, he's the funny little one that's very well spoken.
Yeah.
Yeah, hearing him because he has a few Rolls Royces, and hearing him talking about, and I
Oh.
cannot get his voice. Hearing him talk about Rolls Royces, and he said the reason I drive a Rolls Royce because when I'm on the road, I know that there is no one else of my ilk that shares this road. And I thought, you know what? If that tickles your fancy, if that's what you like, 100%. But I've
Yeah.
done the car thing before, done the suits, the watches, all the fancy stuff. No amount of crappy work would inspire me enough to buy things that I don't want. I want to work on things that I love and enjoy. But in
Yeah.
saying that, if you ever have a friend that has a Rolls Royce who is prepared to take me for a drive, I'm your guy.
All right, touche.
Yeah.
Um, Man, I think when so remember the red Ferrari story. How do I get a car like that? There was a time I wanted a red Ferrari. There's also been a time where I've had lots and lots of money, and there's been times when I've had not so much money.
Mm,
There's been times where I've seen other people uh, who made far, far less money than me financially, who were far happier.
mm,
And they did not have Ferraris.
mm,
They did not have Bentleys or Bugattis. They didn't have multi-million dollar homes. They didn't have those things. And I don't have those things.
mm,
Um, and I think I've been extremely fortunate to, when I was at my peak financially, not to have made those decisions. I made other decisions to put the money back into the business.
mm,
I put a lot of money back into my business. And when I did, I always seem to net out a little bit better. I
Mm,
always netted a little bit better. And then eventually I realized, like your friend, I gave myself too many hats to wear. I saw somebody post a couple days ago about how many business ideas they have. But it was like my beige flag or whatever that post is that's going around is, or my toxic trait is that I want to start a new business every 20 minutes.
mm,
It's like I've been down that road. I've worn all the hats.
mm,
Like, frankly, I have enough going on right now. I'm there. Like I have
mm,
a lot of stuff going on. But I have the awareness now to be able to ask the right question, to be able to get the clarity so that I can make better decisions. At least faster.
mm.
At least a little bit faster. There's a lot of hot frying pans out here. You got to keep your hands off of these hot frying pans.
There's one topic as well. It might be a bit of a sensitive topic, maybe not. So you
Let's
talked
do
about
it.
ADD, ADHD at the start, and one thing that I'm seeing is it's almost sexy, not sexy. It's uh, what's the word for it? It's almost like a cool thing to have ADD, ADHD, or something. Like a lot of people are self-diagnosing
Yeah,
at the
yeah, yeah.
moment, and it's kind of that's it, maybe a flex to be somewhat manic, or no, manic's not the right word. Like what you said, a new thing every 20 minutes, and
Mm-hmm.
people that maybe they do, maybe they don't. Have probably not been diagnosed or whatever. They're just saying my ADHD, and it's become a fad, like popular to have that, and popular to be all over the place, and it's a bit of an identity thing.
Yeah. There's
If you, if
autism too.
yeah,
Asperger's autism spectrum. To
yeah,
be on the spectrum is
and
really
I
really
know some
cool.
people that are genuinely ADHD, and I know some people that are like they are autistic, unbelievably autistic, and they are lovely people, but it's a
Don't
different
talk about Dean like that.
it's a different conversation. It is like, like, whoa, you've got it going on. You absolutely do. And they're like, they're not glorifying it. Um, but then you
Yeah.
see people that don't, that kind of, maybe they've always been that way and now they've found a reason or something like that. But in a world where people really struggle to dial that in, and our attention spans are unbelievably short, what
Mm-hmm.
kind of advice would you give to someone that maybe they're not like trying to flex, or maybe they're not even talking about it, but they feel as though they're struggling to get that dialed in?
Yeah, I don't know where it is. It used to sit on a filing cabinet over here. Um, I have a stack of files. So when I was in middle school, uh, maybe high school, I think it was like eighth grade, my parents sent me to California to have my brain tested. Like this is how deep off it was
Just
for
make sure
me.
you've got one.
Like pretty much. Like like went to the doctor, took the test, went to more doctors, took more tests, went to California, took more tests, had to wear the thing. Like I have literal scans of my brains where they can show the hyperactivity. I know for sure I've got it, and I think it's probably more and more present every day. I've thought about it a lot, and I believe it's taken up a lot of space for me because in
Mm.
some ways I do view it as a superpower. In other ways, I think that it's difficult to live with. Like it is.
So I've got,
So
sorry, keep going. I've got something that ties into this.
yeah. So for me, I've had to come up with coping mechanisms. So number one, red food dye or red dye number 40 is something that shows up big time. Makes it exacerbates the symptoms. Sugar, so a really good diet. Another one, I'm terrible at putting myself to bed. Even at 36 years old, I'm awful at just saying like, "Oh, it's bedtime. I should go to bed." Like I don't have that gear. Or at least that's the narrative I gave myself for a long time. Now, 8:30. Not every night, but I try to start moving toward bed at 8:30. Um,
That blows my mind. I don't understand how people do that.
what's
My
that?
my circadian rhythm is so aggressive. It gets to 7 o'clock, and if I'm still doing things, my body's just like, no, 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 no. We're slowing down now. And it gets to 8:30. Doesn't matter where I am. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. I am
Yeah,
going to sleep. And if I'm awake after 9 o'clock, my body's just like someone's pulling my eyelids down.
yeah,
The idea of staying up late, and I'm an early riser. My body wakes me up very early. The idea of being able to stay awake at that time of night, for me, it's just so foreign. It's not even funny.
at 8:30. So you and I text often. I don't know what time it is for you, but I know it's got to be your morning, and I don't think it's your 4 a.m. I'm probably up till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 days a week, maybe four.
So my 7
That
a.m. is 1 p.m. Pacific.
so 1, 2, 3. So I'm 3 hours ahead of Pacific.
Yep. So you're
So
messaging me around lunchtime, and every time I get a message, that's just, man, what are you doing?
yeah, just like yesterday, it was just a matter of like I just didn't. Well, actually, I know what yesterday was. I wanted to get a workout in, so I
Mm,
went. I have a park I can walk to. So I walked to the park, and there's a third of a mile loop. So I sprinted a lap, walked a lap, sprinted a lap, walked a lap, sprinted a lap, and then walked home. And then before I walked home, I hit some resistance, just push ups, pull ups, little
mm,
stuff on this playground. And I think I jacked myself up. Like I
mm,
worked out really hard and I was ready for another day, like second wind. So normally I'll try to work out in the morning, get that sort of stuff over with so that I can try to start going to bed around
mm.
8:30. But I also have kids. I
Yep.
got to get them settled in, or Rebecca gets them settled in. For me, as the father in the household, it's very difficult, one, for me to go to sleep if they're anywhere near like family space.
Mm,
If I can hear them awake, I always have like this protective piece of me that's like, make sure the doors are locked, make sure they're
mm,
inside, that sort of stuff. So it's very hard for me to go to sleep if the kids are still awake.
mm.
Uh, so yeah, trying to create a rhythm, it's hard, man. I have a bunch of stuff up here that's like, let's see, I will go to bed consistently. You'll love this one. I will go to bed consistently at 10 p.m. every night. That makes you want to just hurl.
Yep.
I will eat and drink according to my nutrition plan for 90 days. I will plan my week each Sunday before 9 p.m. Eastern Time in order to more consistently achieve my weekly milestones. Like I have stuff, reminders. You asked me, how do I get away with it?
Mm,
Two of the chimes that came through while we were here were reminders of activities I need to perform. In the mornings, I have reminders for my goals. Like a difficult for me thing for me is dieting. I will literally forget that I started a diet. So I'll start it yesterday, do my diet. I'm all in. Wake up the next day, I don't even remember the discussion I had yesterday, and I'm like, cereal. Let's eat a bowl of cereal. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's challenging. It's very, very challenging, and I think I don't medicate. I'm just not. I don't want to take amphetamines.
Mm,
I did that when I was in middle school. I know that there's dependency issues and chemical changes in the brain that um, I don't know. If you don't learn to cope with it, are you causing yourself more heartache and more difficulty later? I don't know.
that's Pandora's box.
Yeah,
That is absolutely. But look, I know you've had a couple of things go off, so I've got one final question for you, and thank you for all of this. It was a blast, as it always is. Final question, and this is a very sales question.
yeah.
if there were one or two people that you feel as though would be great on the podcast, the old referral question would be
Yeah,
a
yeah.
good conversation and would enjoy this. Who do you think that could be?
So, first thing that comes to mind, I haven't spoken to Gulliver in years, but because you guys are both Aussies, I think you should meet Gulliver, and Gulliver should be on your podcast. Absolutely.
100%. And I will forgive you saying Aussies, not Aussies.
Aussie, sorry.
Yeah,
Isn't it
thank you.
spelled Aussie? Aussie?
Yeah, but it's Aussie. Z.
Well, you should spell it differently than James. I'd like to put in my vote for you to change the spelling.
Okay. Okay. Would you be happy to make that connection with Gulliver?
I'll try, yeah. I'll reach out to him. I'll tell you the story. Um, we did not leave on phenomenal terms, but I also am not big on leaving great relationships un, un, unbandaged. So maybe there's some bandaging that could come from this. A second one. Yeah, I don't know. I Let me think on that. I've got a handful of people that we share such a similar circle. I'm afraid if I make a recommendation, it would be people you've already chatted with.
Mm,
Um, I would love for you to get someone like. Uh, have you had Dean on?
I have.
You've had Dean on. What
Yeah.
about Taylor?
Taylor.
Taylor Welsh. Dean works with Taylor,
I haven't had
and
Taylor on. No.
so I am yet to figure out. I'll say this publicly. I've not met and spent any. I've met him. I haven't spent a ton of time with Taylor, but he claims to be responsible for like 99% of all the sales success in our space. And I would love for somebody to have a conversation with Taylor and see where it goes.
I'll reach out to Dean and see if we can make that happen. And I'll say Robert
I don't
said.
know.
I'll play in this clip.
I feel like I maybe took some of my own thoughts and I projected them into the world through your podcast as a means, and maybe I shouldn't have done that. I digress. I'll find another guest for you.
Amazing. Well, we've been on here for a couple of hours. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll chat again soon.
See you, man. Thanks for having me.